Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive.
Today, we're setting aside the quest for the most esoteric, mind-bending vocabulary and focusing on something far more powerful: precision. We are diving deep into the practical, high-frequency building blocks of fluent English. This isn't about knowing 1,000 rare words. It's really about mastering the handful of common structural phrases that make you sound truly competent, accurate, and, nuanced.
Exactly. It's the difference between just speaking English and speaking effective English. Advanced learners often reach a plateau, don't they? Because they might prioritize obscure vocabulary over mastering the fundamental, everyday structural phrases that native speakers use almost automatically. These seemingly simple structures are actually, well, dense bundles of sophisticated grammatical rules, right? And our sources today are pretty unique, I think. They actually come from excerpts aimed at training expert English teachers on how to explain these exact foundational concepts. So for you, the learner, we're kind of providing the ultimate shortcut here. We're not just showing you the phrases, we're extracting the key teaching points and grammatical nuances, the stuff that expert instructors spend, well, ages hammering home.
Mm-hmm. Our mission today is really centered on structural fluidity and precision. We want to ensure you understand the subtle but absolutely critical differences in structure and meaning for four essential English phrases. Honestly, mastering this foundational architecture is probably the quickest way to sound completely natural and competent.
Okay, so we have four common structures that look straightforward on the surface. They relate to success, averages, performance, and summation. But the way we use them dictates everything about the grammar of the sentence, specifically how verbs, adjectives, and nouns interact. It's quite intricate.
It really is. And what's fascinating here is how these concepts reveal the underlying mechanisms of English sentence architecture. We're going to be looking at the required supporting elements, the linking verbs, the auxiliary verbs, and the adverbs that must accompany these core ideas to make the sentence whole. It's a foundational masterclass, really.
Okay, let's start with achievement then. That's something everyone needs to talk about, right? Our source material gives us this structural triplet, all conveying the same positive meaning, but crucially, requiring three radically different sentence constructions. We've got he was successful, he succeeded, and he had success.
Exactly. And this triplet represents the kind of grammatical flexibility a highly competent speaker possesses. If you, as the learner, are only comfortable using one of these forms, well, you limit your ability to express subtle shifts in meaning or formality or emphasis. So we really must identify the distinct structural requirements for each form right away.
Okay, let's break that down. Section 1, the nuances of success. Verb, adjective, and noun forms. So, first up, 1.1. Identifying the structural triplet. Let's talk about the grammatical rules. If you choose the most compact option, he succeeded, what exactly is happening grammatically there?
Right. So the verb form, succeeded, is a strong, standalone action verb. It's very compact and action-focused. It really only needs a subject and maybe a modifier to tell us when or how the action concluded. Crucially, the verb itself carries the tense. He succeeded yesterday, he will succeed tomorrow. The power of this form is its directness. It focuses the listener entirely on the completion of the action itself.
Okay, but immediately the structure shifts when we look at the adjectival form. He was successful. You can't just put the subject and the adjective together, can you? It doesn't work.
No, absolutely not. The sentence just breaks without the linking verb. The adjective successful describes a state or a condition. It's descriptive. Therefore, it requires a linking verb, almost universally a form of the verb to be, like was, is, will be, has been. Ooh, and this shifts the focus, doesn't it? From a single action, like the verb form, to describing the individual's inherent state. He is successful, she is a successful student. It's about what they are.
Right. And then the third one, the noun form, he had success, feels the most abstract, perhaps. We're taking the outcome, success, and sort of treating it as a quantity or an experience.
Precisely. The noun form needs an auxiliary verb, typically to have.
Hmm.
You are framing success not as something the person is, that's the adjective, or something the person did, that's the verb, but something that was attained or experienced, maybe accumulated over time. This is actually a very common structural pattern in English. You see it everywhere. Where complex ideas are nominalized, they get turned into nouns, and then paired with simple auxiliary verbs like have, get, or make. Think about have fun, get permission, make progress.
That makes sense. Okay, so let's zoom in on each one. 1.2, taking the adjective form. He was successful, said. Our source material points out that expert teachers rely on this structure quite heavily. Why is this specific adjective linking verb structure so appealing and useful for a learner who's trying to boost their fluency?
Well, I think the core benefit is the flexibility of modification.
Mhm.
That's huge. Because successful is an adjective, you can immediately and effortlessly modify its intensity using adverbs of degree. Think of all the adverbs that can just slot in right before it. He was enormously successful, moderately successful, surprisingly successful. This allows for an incredible gradient of description, doesn't it? You can be very precise about the level.
And grammatically, the heavy lifting for tense is just handled by the simple verb to be, which is quite straightforward.
Exactly. You only need to conjugate to be, which, let's face it, is one of the most fundamental verbs learners tackle early on. He is successful now, he has been successful for years, he will remain successful. It makes tense agreement relatively simple. And furthermore, something teachers really focus on. The adjectival form often partners with different prepositions than the verb form. This is a tricky area. You might be successful in a field, like successful in business, or successful at a specific task, like successful at negotiating. It describes the general condition or area.
Okay, so if I were, say, drafting a memo describing someone's overall career standing, the adjectival form might be the best fit because it describes their consistent condition rather than pinpointing just one moment of achievement.
Absolutely. That's a perfect use case. It lends itself beautifully to broader, less time-bound descriptions. It says something about the person's status or their general state over a period.
Got it. Okay, 1.3. Teaching the verb form. He succeeded. Now let's pivot back to the verb form. He succeeded. This one feels much punchier, more direct somehow. What are the scenarios where this concise form really excels, and what are the specific grammatical modifications it requires?
Well, the verb form is ideal for concise reporting or summary statements, especially in more formal contexts. Think about writing a headline or a project summary or meeting minutes. The negotiation succeeded is far more impactful, more direct than the negotiation was successful. It focuses purely on the action reaching its conclusion, without any extra descriptive fluff.
Okay, so if the adjective form uses adverbs of degree, like how much success, what kind of modification does the verb form succeeded need? You can't say he succeeded very.
Exactly, you can't. It needs adverbs of manner telling us how the action was performed. So you don't say he succeeded very, you'd say he succeeded brilliantly, or they succeeded quickly, or perhaps she succeeded narrowly. Honestly, mastering the difference between adverbs of degree, which modify adjectives, and adverbs of manner, which modify verbs, is a huge leap toward fluency. It's a subtle but critical distinction.
And crucially, we need to talk about the prepositions again, because they change, right? While the adjective might use in or at for fields or tasks, the verb succeed often takes in followed by a gerund, the ing form emphasizing the active task itself. Like, he succeeded in completing the marathon. That in seems pretty essential when linking the verb to the subsequent action.
That's a key structural difference, yeah. One that expert teachers absolutely have to highlight. The preposition often changes based on the grammatical role of the core word, whether it's a verb, noun, or adjective. So if you're speaking or writing concisely about a specific finished achievement, the verb form is probably your strongest rhetorical lever. It's clean and direct.
Makes sense. Okay, on to the last one in this triplet, 1.4. Teaching the noun form. He had success. This one seems to pose unique challenges for learners. Our source material notes that many non-native speakers try to use the article a or make it plural, like successes. Why is success often treated as an uncountable noun here? And what does that mean for sentence construction?
Right. This is a major area of confusion, definitely. When we use success generally, referring to the abstract state of achieving desired results or, prosperity, it's treated as an uncountable mass noun. Just like you don't usually say a water or a happiness when speaking generally, you don't typically say a success in this general context. It simply requires no article. You talk about having success or achieving success.
Wait, the word can be countable sometimes, can't it? I'm sure I've seen a success.
Absolutely, you have. And this is exactly the kind of nuanced detail that defines expert usage. It's tricky. Success becomes countable when it refers to a specific individual achievement or event. For example, the launch of the new product was a major success. See, a success. Here, it refers to one discrete successful event. But when we discuss the overall attainment of positive results over time, as in he had success in his career, it's usually uncountable. The distinction is really between the general state versus a singular identifiable instance.
Okay, that contrast is vital. So the general accumulation of good outcomes is uncountable, but a specific single positive outcome is countable.
Precisely. And coming back to the verb to have, when we used to have, like, He had limited success or they had spectacular success. It frames success as something accumulated or experienced, often over a definite duration. The focus subtly shifts away from the person's ongoing effort, maybe, and more onto the result that was experienced or attained. It's a very descriptive structure, particularly good for summarizing historical performance or experience.
So here's where it gets really interesting for you, the learner, I think. If you can fluently pivot between these three structures, the concise verb for a specific action, the adjectival structure for describing a state and allowing modification, and the noun structure for talking about experience or accumulation. Wow. You immediately unlock a much richer, more flexible descriptive vocabulary just for talking about performance or achievement. You're no longer constrained by knowing just one vocabulary item, like the verb succeed. You actually have control over the entire syntax of achievement.
It's absolute proof that mastering these subtle structural differences is the key to sounding natural and precise. It allows you, the speaker, to choose the grammatical environment that perfectly matches the specific nuance and formality level you're aiming for. It's about choice and control.
Fantastic. Okay, let's move on. Section 2, quantifying reality. The precision of on average. Moving on to our second structural phrase. On average. This small prepositional phrase. It's actually a massive rhetorical tool, isn't it? It seems essential for any speaker or writer who needs to discuss data or trends or complex information accurately.
Oh, absolutely. On average is defined not merely as a synonym for usually, which is a common misconception. It's really a phrase used to summarize a calculated tendency, a rate, or a general finding based on data. Its crucial function, the thing it signals, is that exceptions exist, definitely, but that the overall trend or calculation supports the generalization being made. It is the language of statistical grounding. It gives weight.
And what's fascinating about this structure is its incredible flexibility in placement within a sentence. You can essentially drop it almost anywhere without really breaking the core meaning, can't you?
That versatility makes it incredibly high utility for learners. It can work as an introductory phrase, immediately setting that statistical tone. On average, 3 cars pass this intersection every minute, puts the condition up front. Or it can act as a mid-sentence qualifier, sort of slowing down the assertion. The factory workers, on average, produce 50 units per hour, adds nuance mid-thought. Or, quite commonly, it can conclude a statement, providing a final sort of hedge or summary. The price of gas fluctuated less this month, on average. Its semantic role anchoring the statement in some kind of calculation remains constant regardless of position.
Okay, but this raises an important question, I think. If I simply want to say something happens often, why not just say usually? Why go through the effort of including on average? What's the actual rhetorical gain for the speaker?
Well, the difference really boils down to authority and the implied source of the information. Usually is quite subjective. It often relies on the speaker's personal observation or general impression. It feels anecdotal. On average, on the other hand, implies a reliance on measurable, collected data. Some kind of calculation has occurred. Even if you, the speaker, aren't immediately sharing the specific data set, the phrase lends the statement statistical credibility. It feels more objective. Think about it. If a meteorologist says, it usually rains in April, well, that's an observation based on their experience, maybe. But if they say, on average, we receive 5 inches of rain in April, that strongly implies that years, maybe decades, of climate data were factored into that statement. It's a tool for lending weight, real weight, to a generalization.
Got it. So expert teachers would then instruct learners to reserve this powerful phrase for specific contexts where that sense of statistical authority is actually needed or intended. What are those key scenarios they'd highlight?
Yeah, it's vital when discussing hard data. Think statistics, financial figures, results from medical trials, or demographic research, things you can count or measure. For example, on average, the investment portfolio yields 7% annually. That sounds informed. Or describing routine quantifiable behavior. The survey showed that people, on average, check their phone 80 times per day. Again, based on data. It also cleverly softens a claim about a group by implicitly admitting variability exists, but it retains credibility because it's based on calculation, not just guesswork.
So it's actually a really great way to communicate that you understand the complexity of the world. You're acknowledging that, yes, variability exists, people aren't all the same, situations differ, but you are still confident in the overarching pattern revealed by the data. It's precision layered with nuance.
Exactly. Without it, you risk making an absolute statement that's just too easily refuted by a single counterexample. If you just say, Workers spend 45 minutes commuting. Well, anyone who commutes for 10 minutes or 90 minutes can argue with you and say you're wrong. But if you qualify it and say, workers, on average, spend 45 minutes commuting, you are protected by the statistical reality. You've acknowledged the range. It really helps manage that tension between individual specific data points and the generalized trend you want to communicate.
Okay, so since this phrase is so powerful but also quite specific in its implication, what are the common errors related to on average that expert teachers find themselves having to actively correct in their students? 2.3. Common errors to avoid.
Well, the first one, which we sort of touched on, is redundancy. Learners sometimes pair it unnecessarily with other quantifying or softening terms, often just for emphasis. Thinking more is better. Saying something like, generally speaking, on average, the costs are high is just redundant. Generally and on average perform very similar rhetorical softening roles. Just stick to one, usually the one that fits the context, best likely on average if data is involved.
Right, choose the most precise tool. And the second major error relates back to its core definition, right? Using it with things you can't actually average.
Yes, exactly. Because on average implies a mathematical calculation, it really should be used carefully with things that cannot be easily or meaningfully measured numerically. Now, while you might occasionally hear native speakers use it loosely with abstract concepts like someone might joke, on average, I feel happy on Fridays, proper. Expert instruction really dictates using it primarily with measurable data. Time, speed, frequency, cost, height, weight, percentages, etc. Using it to try and quantify things like complex emotional states or aesthetic quality or, levels of beauty, it just diminishes its authority. It signals a lapse in precision, makes you sound a bit less credible.
So this little phrase, on average, is really your shortcut to sounding well-informed and careful when discussing data or trends. It's the two words that imply you've done your homework, or at least you're referencing information that has some basis in calculation.
Precisely. Use it well and you sound knowledgeable. Misuse it and you risk sounding imprecise.
Okay, great. Section 3, measuring performance. The flexible verb phrase, do well. Our third essential structure is the phrase, do well. Now, this phrase is deceptively simple, isn't it? Because it contains two of the absolute highest frequency words in English, do and well, basic words. But combined, they create an incredibly versatile and actually quite powerful idiomatic unit.
Do well acts as a fixed phrasal unit, basically meaning to perform successfully or achieve a good outcome. It's pretty indispensable, I'd say, because it can be applied to describe a positive result across almost any activity imaginable, from, physical actions to highly abstract financial performance.
Oh boy, we absolutely must scrutinize the word well in this context. That's key, isn't it?
Yeah.
It functions purely as an adverb here, describing how the doing was performed, which brings us immediately to probably the most common teaching point associated with this phrase.
This is the absolute cornerstone of instruction for do well. We have to contrast do well with the incredibly common learner mistake of using the adjective good instead. If you are describing performance, that is, the quality of the action itself, you must use the adverb. He did well. If you say he did good, well, technically, grammatically speaking, you are implying the person performed an action that was morally beneficial or righteous, like donating to charity. Not that their performance itself was high quality. This distinction adverb, modifying the verb do versus an adjective describing a noun, is just fundamental to sounding correct and competent in English.
Okay, now, I have a challenge for you here. We all hear native speakers, particularly in very casual settings, say things like, wow, the team did good today, or you did good, kid. If the goal for our listener is fluency and competence, should they try to mimic this casual error sometimes, or should they stick strictly to the grammatically correct do well? What's the advice?
That is an excellent, very nuanced point, and it's precisely where expert teaching has to move beyond simple, rigid rules. Here's the guidance. For formal, academic, or professional settings, and importantly for the exact purpose of demonstrating competence and precision, the learner must strictly adhere to do well. No question. If they are aiming for the level of competence required for a business meeting or an academic paper or a formal report, then saying do good is simply an error. It will be noticed. However, in extremely informal conversational settings, yes, they will absolutely hear do good, and they need to understand it. The key is recognizing that do well is the neutral, high-utility, universally correct option that always signals competence. So the safe advice is, stick to do well until you are incredibly confident in your ability to navigate those very subtle sociolinguistic nuances, and know when do good might pass unnoticed in casual chat. For competence, do well is the gold standard.
That's very clear advice. Stick to do well for guaranteed correctness. Okay, let's talk about 3.2, scenario versatility. The structural simplicity of do well seems to allow it to replace a massive number of more context-specific verbs. Let's look at the sheer range of scenarios where this phrase is taught to apply because it really highlights its incredible structural value for a learner.
Yes, its versatility stems directly from the very basic, almost abstract nature of the verb do. It can stand in for nearly any action verb when you add well. So teachers point out we use it extensively in academic performance. The students did well on the exam. That replaces scored highly or performed excellently. In professional or financial life, their stock market investments are doing extremely well. This replaces more specific verbs like prospering or yielding highly. It's a great general term.
And the phrase even applies to physical or health statuses, which seems like a completely different domain, but it works perfectly there too.
Absolutely. When discussing recovery from illness or just general health, she is doing well after the surgery. This replaces recovering satisfactorily or is in good condition, or describing the general prosperity or state of a group or entity. The business community is generally doing well this year. This replaces flourishing or thriving. Because the verb do itself is so unspecific, the adverb well just colors it with positivity across almost any domain you can think of.
It really is, structurally speaking, an incredibly versatile little engine for expressing success or good performance. So if you, the learner, don't immediately recall the specific verb for a successful action in a particular technical field, maybe finance or science, do well provides a perfect, grammatically sound, and highly clear placeholder. That's very useful.
It gives the learner confidence, doesn't it? Instead of pausing, searching for the perfect, maybe more complex synonym like excel or prosper or succeed, which remember require careful conjugation and often very specific prepositional phrases, they can just rely on the simple, clear, and universally understood do well. It keeps the conversation flowing.
Okay, and 3.3, tense and conjugation. The structural utility is amplified, isn't it, by the fact that the verb do is one of the most common and actually one of the easiest verbs to conjugate in English. This makes the entire phrase usable across all tenses without the learner having to memorize lots of complex irregular forms, unlike many other verbs related to success.
That is the hidden genius of this construction, really. Because the core verb is do, you effortlessly navigate the entire timeline of English with minimal fuss. Think about it. They did well last quarter. Simple past. They are doing well right now. Present continuous. They will do well next year. Simple future. They have done well historically. Present perfect. This seamless conjugation across all the main tenses is precisely why expert teachers emphasize it so much. It's an easy win for learners. It helps them sound fluent and accurate across different time frames with minimal structural effort. It's very efficient.
It really is a structural keystone then. It covers performance, achievement, health, prosperity, all across time, using one simple, flexible verb base. It genuinely simplifies the expression of achievement and provides a really consistent structural output for you, the learner. Very handy phrase.
Couldn't agree more. High frequency, high utility.
All right. Okay, final section. Section 4, the rhetorical signal. The bottom line is, finally, we turn to the rhetorical signal that, well, wraps up complex discussions, condenses lengthy arguments, and delivers the ultimate verdict. The bottom line is...
Yes, this phrase is almost a pure discourse marker. It's primarily a signal to the listener. Its main function isn't really to introduce brand new information, but rather to tell the listener to shift their focus, to pay attention in a different way. It explicitly signals that the speaker is about to provide the ultimate, most important conclusion, the synthesized core truth, or the final decisive outcome, effectively cutting through all the preceding complexity or detail.
Yeah, it's like the verbal equivalent of a big red arrow pointing saying, you might have heard 5 preceding paragraphs of dense detail, but here is the one single thing you absolutely must take away and remember.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of communication, this phrase is fundamentally about rhetorical power and efficiency. In today's world, with so much information overload, the ability to synthesize effectively is absolutely paramount. This phrase acts as a kind of cognitive filter. It primes the listener's brain to receive the distilled core message. It forces a transition from detailed analysis to the high-level, most crucial conclusion.
It also seems to have a unique structural role in the sentence itself. It doesn't really modify anything else, does it? It acts almost like the subject itself, introducing the main clause. Yeah, the structure. The bottom line is X, where X is the conclusion.
That's correct. The noun phrase, the bottom line, acts as the subject of the sentence, and the verb is, or was, etc., links it directly to the conclusion, which then functions as the predicate nominative or predicate adjective. This very structural setup gives the phrase its characteristic punch. It elevates the upcoming conclusion to the status of a final, almost undeniable truth or reality for the purpose of the conversation.
And I think understanding the origin of this phrase really deepens its meaning and its rhetorical weight, doesn't it? The bottom line isn't just some random metaphor. It is literally the last line on a financial income statement, the profit or loss line.
Yes, exactly. It is directly rooted in financial accounting practices. That final line on the P&L represents the net profit or loss after all revenues, expenses, interest, taxes have been accounted for. It's the definitive figure, the one number that says if the venture made money or not. So, by borrowing this phrase and using it in general conversation, we implicitly borrow that sense of definitive calculation, finality, and the ultimate material result or consequence.
Right. And that financial origin definitely imparts a sense of maybe formality and certainly decisiveness. You probably wouldn't use this phrase when casually discussing why you like a certain type of pizza, for instance.
You probably wouldn't, no. Unless, perhaps, you were treating the pizza choice with some kind of extreme mock gravity for humorous effect. But seriously, expert teachers would instruct learners to use this phrase when they need to summarize a complex negotiation, or deliver the key verdict of a detailed report, or provide the essential takeaway from a complicated set of facts or arguments. It's typically used in situations demanding decisiveness and absolute clarity about the core result or the most important factor.
Okay, let's try and place it on the formality spectrum then, for clarity. 4.3, Instructor's Guidance on Tone and Formality. It's certainly more formal than just saying, so, what this all comes down to is, but how does it stand in relation to, say, a very formal phrase like in conclusion?
Good question. It is significantly less formal than in conclusion, which you mainly see in written academic essays or perhaps very formal prepared speeches. You rarely hear in conclusion in natural conversation. However, the bottom line is far more decisive and carries much more weight than a symbol connector like to summarize or so basically. The bottom line carries a distinct, almost corporate, results-oriented kind of decisiveness. It feels quite final. Because of that, it should probably be used somewhat judiciously. Using it signals that the preceding discussion, the exploration of details, is now effectively over. Here is the final takeaway, the decision point. Overusing it could potentially make the speaker seem a bit abrupt or maybe dismissive of the details.
So thinking about practical application for the listener, if you're trying to efficiently communicate a core summary in a perhaps high-stakes, time-limited environment like a management review meeting or maybe a media briefing, this phrase seems invaluable.
It's the ultimate tool for synthesis in those contexts, yes. It implicitly acknowledges that perhaps complexity was discussed and was necessary. But now the essential message, the actionable part, must be delivered efficiently and clearly. It is a powerful structural marker that shows you, the speaker, have not only understood but successfully processed the information and distilled it down to its fundamental truth or implication.
Okay, so 4.4, connecting back to the learner. What does this all mean for you, the listener, trying to improve your English? This phrase, the bottom line is, essentially tells your audience one thing. Stop paying attention to the finer details for a moment, because here comes the final, most important, perhaps action-oriented word. It's a powerful lever for cutting through the noise and delivering core knowledge effectively.
And that ties directly back to your goal as a learner of gaining knowledge quickly and using it thoroughly and effectively. By using the bottom line as appropriately, you demonstrate command over the material you're discussing. You show that you didn't just passively understand the analysis or the points made, but you successfully performed the synthesis required to arrive at the core conclusion. It really is a hallmark of sophisticated, efficient communication.
Fantastic. Okay, let's wrap this up. That was quite a deep dive into four structures that honestly seem pretty simple on the surface, but turn out to be structurally complex and absolutely fundamental to achieving high-level competence in English. We started with what looked like basic vocabulary and ended up uncovering layers and layers of grammar things like linking verbs, adverbial modification, nominalization, countable versus uncountable nouns, and even rhetorical signaling.
Mhm. We covered the three distinct structural paths for discussing achievement or success. The concise, action-focused verb, he succeeded, which requires those adverbs of manner. The flexible, state-describing adjective requiring to be, he was successful, which allows for easy modification by adverbs of degree. And the more abstract, experience-focused noun form requiring to have, he had success, where that distinction between countable and uncountable usage is so critical.
Yeah, then we explored the statistical qualifier on average, really emphasizing that it is not just a mere synonym for usually, but a specific rhetorical tool that implies data calculation, lending authority to generalizations while also softening absolute claims by acknowledging variance.
Following that, we analyzed the highly versatile performance adverbial do well, focusing really intensely on the importance of the adverb well, modifying the verb do, and contrasting it with the common do good error. And we highlighted how this simple conjugation of do allows this phrase to act as a universal placeholder for positive performance across academics, health, finance, almost anything.
And finally, we wrapped up with the ultimate rhetorical closer. The bottom line is, tracing its specific origins in finance and highlighting its structural role as a powerful discourse marker that signals the delivery of the final, synthesized, and most critical conclusion, efficiently cutting right to the chase.
So the takeaway for you, the listener, is really clear, I hope. True fluency, that feeling of competence, is achieved not just through knowing lots of obscure vocabulary, but through genuine mastery of these foundational grammatical structures. It's the architectural skeleton of the sentence, really, that allows your ideas to be expressed with the precision and nuance needed for effective communication.
It's amazing, really. We started with just 4 common everyday phrases, and we found ourselves discussing quite complex concepts: the difference between adverbs of degree versus manner, the subtle nuance of uncountable nouns, the power of discourse markers. It truly shows how much depth is hidden in plain sight, right there in the words and structures we use every single day without necessarily thinking about them.
Absolutely. And perhaps consider this as your final provocative thought to take away. Think about how your own native language structures these core concepts: success, average, performance, and summation. Does it rely heavily on auxiliary verbs like English sometimes does? Or perhaps does a single, heavily inflected verb carry all that meaning within itself? Does it use a formal rhetorical phrase derived from commerce like the bottom line is? Or does it have completely different, maybe more conversational markers for summarizing? Comparing those systems, your language versus English, can really deepen your understanding of English structure and its specific complexities even further. It can reveal why English grammar requires these particular combinations and structures to achieve maximum precision and clarity. It's a fascinating exercise.